Okay, so I'm going to make this as simple and as clear as possible. While this is a very complicated topic, we do have a plethora of new rules that have literally just been established for CFR, which is the Code of Federal Regulations. And guess what? Most of them, the vast majority, there's like 55 or so rule changes. They all have to do with the banking sector and specifically liquidity risk measurement standards, and in this particular case, they've even added the word monitoring. So we're going to be looking at Title 12, Part 249 in this video. We're going to go over the general title change and a few definitional changes, and let's get this thing started. So this is a brief view of just 2 out of 3 parts that were changed. There's another section with just this much amount of rules on it that have been changed as well. We're going to be looking at liquidity risk measurement standards and monitoring, and some of the definitions that have been changed along with it. And this is big changes to the banking sector. So the changes, the title, they literally added a comma and the word "and monitoring." So I guess they're actually going to start monitoring the liquidity risk. About time. Now if you look at this, they added this entire paragraph. Anything in red with a strike through it is removed language. Anything with green in it is added language. The board may require a board-regulated institution to maintain an amount of available stable funding greater than otherwise required under this part, or to take any other measure to improve the board-regulated institution's stable funding, if the board determines that the board-regulated institution's stable funding requirements as calculated under this part are not commensurate with the board-regulated institution's funding risks. In making determinations under this section, the board will apply notice and response procedures as set forth in 12 CFR 263.202. Now, they just moved paragraph C and renamed paragraph B originally, is now renamed to paragraph C, and then they added in deficient stable funding levels. The paragraph reads, "Nothing in this part limits the authority of the board under any other provision of law or regulation to take supervisory or enforcement action, including action to address unsafe or unsound practices or conditions, deficient liquidity levels, deficient stable funding levels," which is this new terminology that they've added, "or violations of law." So it sounds to me like this is a new term they've created to hold some people accountable. Now, changes to the definitions continued. Collateralized deposit. In paragraph 1, the only added language we see is required to be. Before, it was just a deposit of a public sector entity held at the board-regulated institution that is secured under applicable law, and now it is required to be secured, so that's good. Paragraph 2 is interesting because a deposit of a fiduciary account awaiting investment or distribution held at the institution for which the institution is a fiduciary and is required under the National Banks Law through the Federal Savings Associations and applicable state laws to set aside assets owned by the board institution as security, which gives the depositor priority over the assets in the event, and this is the cool part, the institution enters into receivership, bankruptcy, insolvency, liquidation, resolution, or similar proceeding. So yeah, it's starting to get a little jacked here. Now, they also added a new term. I'm sorry if you can't see it. It may cut it off. I'm going to leave a copy of this PowerPoint in the description so you can see. But this reminds me a little bit of Skyrim. They have added the term encumbered. Now it says encumbered means with respect to an asset that the asset is subject to legal, regulatory, contractual, or other restriction on the ability of the board institution to monetize the asset, such as GameStop or AMC, is pledged explicitly or implicitly to secure or provide credit enhancement to any transaction, not including when the asset is pledged to a central bank or a U.S. government-sponsored enterprise, where potential credit secured by the asset is not currently extended to the board institution or its consolidated subsidiaries, and the pledged asset is not required to support access to the payment services of a central bank. In other terms, you can't have already used it. It has to be good. Now, check this out. Unconditionally cancelable means with respect to a credit or liquidity facility that an institution may, at any time, with or without cause, refuse to extend credit under the facility to the extent permitted under the applicable law. Now, holy cow, That's some real change. That's like the heart of the rule book. So it's funny that, you know, I don't know. It's just, we're going to look into all these. It's going to take some time, but wow. Looking at the very first one, the fact that they've added some of the stuff they just added that we just saw, very, very, very positive. So let's go.